Welcome friends to this course on understanding episodist drama. We are in week 3 and this is going to be lecture number 4. Today we'll discuss Beckett's metaphysics. Beckett was deeply influenced by a Christian saint, theologian and philosopher Saint Augustine. His works often explore existential thoughts which align with the philosophical insights of Saint Augustine. Augustine's pre-convergent writings reflect a deep existential despair, a yearning for some kind of divine grace. His philosophy is also a reflection on the futility of earthly pursuits. Similarly, Beckett's characters also display moments of existential uncertainty and despair. Beckett was deeply influenced by what St. Augustine has said. Do not despair, one of the thieves was saved. Do not presume, one of the thieves was damned. This philosophical insight of St. Augustine is at the core of Waiting for Godot. Vladimir and Stragon in the play debate the possibility of redemption or salvation. They directly quote St. Augustine and meditate whether their redemption is a possibility or not. While Augustine ultimately resolves his existential despair through divine grace, Beckett's works present a bleaker view, often denying the possibility of redemption. In Waiting for Godot, the possibility of redemption is constantly delayed and postponed. Godot's arrival is infinitely postponed. We also discussed the influence of St. Augustine in our discussion on Crabbe's last tape. Crabbe listens to his recordings of the past, thereby creating a constant tension between his past and present. His reflections on time and memory often echo Augustinian philosophical thought. René Descartes was another major influence on Samuel Beckett. One can easily discern the famous Cartesian dictum, cogito ergo sum, in almost all important works of Beckett. Descartes has posited the fundamental distinction of mind and body, proposing his theory of mind-body dualism. While Beckett was undoubtedly influenced by Descartes' focus on doubt and the nature of selfhood, he also subverts Cartesian optimism and foundationalism. In Waiting for Godot, Vladimir and Stragon's endless waiting mirrors a kind of Cartesian doubt as they question time, place, and purpose, although no foundational truth is ever reached. In Crabbe's last tape, Crabbe's aging body is contrasted with the freshness of the memories that Crabbe has recorded in the tapes. Beckett is suggesting that mind and its memories can perhaps be recorded, but the decay and death of the body is inevitable. Beckett's interest in the mind-body dualism reflects a Cartesian influence, but he often portrays the body as a source of suffering and the mind as trapped in ceaseless futile thought. Arthur Schopenhauer was another important influence on Beckett's writings. Schopenhauer's philosophy of the will to live as an irrational, endless striving is echoed in Beckett's portrayal of futile human efforts. Schopenhauer had posited that will to live is a fundamental aspect of human existence. Even in the midst of suffering, this unconscious will to live persists. In plays like Waiting for Godot, Endgame, Crabbe's last tape, this paradox is profoundly reflected. Although Vladimir and Stragon are suffering, they don't want to live, yet they go on. They postpone their suicide because of this will to live. Beckett's recurring themes of suffering, monotony, and despair align with Schopenhauer's belief that life is inherently filled with suffering and that art offers a temporary escape. Friedrich Nietzsche was another significant influence on Beckett. Nietzsche's philosophy is often considered to be nihilistic. Nihilism is a belief that life intrinsically lacks value, purpose, and meaning. Nihilist philosophy often rejects religious beliefs, moral principles, and universal truths. Nihilism can be both passive and active. Passive nihilism symbolizes a resigned acceptance of meaninglessness, leading to despair, apathy, or escapism. Active nihilism would involve a destructive force that seeks to dismantle existing values and structures. Nietzsche has famously argued that God is dead. This pronouncement is a metaphor of the death of the Christian worldview and its philosophical foundations. Nietzsche is suggesting that in the absence of God, humanity is encountering a vacuum of meaning. However, for Nietzsche, this is also an opportunity for re-evaluation of values. Nietzsche suggests that this is the time when humanity should stick to more life-affirming value systems. Nietzsche's ideas about the death of God and the resulting existential crisis deeply influenced Beckett and his exploration of a world without divine order or inherent meaning. Non-arrival of Godot in the play Waiting for Godot is certainly a Nietzschean influence. Endgame also appears to be a dramatic meditation upon Nietzschean nihilism. Beckett's repetitive cyclical narratives evoke Nietzsche's concept of eternal recurrence, where characters are trapped in endless, unchanging loops of behavior. Although Beckett is without any hope of the arrival of Superman to redress the crisis of humanity. Kierkegaard and his philosophy of existential angst and despair also finds echoes in the plays of Samuel Beckett. For Kierkegaard, existential angst arises from human awareness of freedom. This dizziness of freedom emanates from realization that individuals must define themselves through their choices in a world without inherent meaning. Beckett's plays similarly portray existential angst. For example, in the play Waiting for Godot, Vladimir and Estragon endlessly wait for the arrival of Godot who never arrives. This certainly leads to existential angst. Their endless waiting mirrors Kierkegaard's notion of existential dread. They are free to leave, but they remain paralyzed by the hope that Godot will come tomorrow and grant a new meaning to their existence. Unfortunately, Godot never arrives. Unlike Kierkegaard, whose idea of leap of faith towards God offers some respite, Beckett's world is without any intervention. There is no hope of any divine grace in the Beckettian universe. His characters are trapped in an unresolved waiting and never-ending despair. Martin Heidegger can also be seen to have influenced the writings of Samuel Beckett. Heidegger has posited his notion of Dasein, being there. Heidegger was suggesting that human existence is embedded in the world and human life is journey towards death. Since being toward death is fundamental to human existence, Heidegger proposed that only way to live authentically is to confront our own mortality. Beckett's play Endgame is perhaps a very interesting dramatic representation of Heideggerian idea of being toward death, wherein we find out Ham waiting for his death on his wheelchair. Although Ham is conscious that he lives in a world where nothing is permanent, where nothing is certain, the world in which he has to decay as the world itself is decaying. Yet he indulges in futile conversations and meaningless routines. The stark, barren settings in Beckett's plays reflect a Heideggerian sense of being thrown into an incomprehensible world. Beckett's exploration of time as repetitive and meaningless aligns with Heidegger's view of the human experience of temporality and inevitability of death. In addition to Proust, Henry Bergson was another major influence on the writings of Samuel Beckett as far as his exploration of time and memory is concerned. Bergson's idea about durée, subjective time, and the fluidity of memory resonate in Krapp's last tape, where the protagonist revisits his past through tape recordings, experiencing time as fragmented and disjointed. While Beckett shares Bergson's interest in time, he presents it as oppressive rather than liberating, emphasizing status over evolution. In Waiting for Godot, time feels suspended, and it echoes Bergson's notion of durée. Because time is more a subjective attitude, Beckett also differs from Bergson in many ways. Bergson had suggested that life evolves in unlikely ways through creative processes rather than predetermined mechanisms. Beckett has subverted this idea of creative evolution proposed by Bergson, suggesting that evolution is more often regressive and meaningless. One contemporary philosopher who shares Beckett's pessimism is Emile Cioran. Emile Cioran is a Romanian philosopher whose writings are marked by philosophical pessimism. Cioran argues, what do you do from morning to night? And the answer he gives is, I endure myself. What does Cioran mean when he says, I endure myself? He suggests that he is suffering. Suffering not only because of others, but also because of his own mind. He goes on to say, I don't understand why we must do things in this world, why we must have friends and aspirations, hopes and dreams. Would not it be better to retreat to a faraway corner of the world where all its noise and complications would be heard no more? Then we could renounce culture and ambitions. We would lose everything and gain nothing. For what is there to be gained from this world? Cioran is suggesting that human beings cannot gain anything from this world. Whatever they consider they have gained is perhaps meaningless and futile. Similar kind of futility is experienced by Vladimir and Estragon in the play Waiting for Godot. They have no friends, they have no connection with society, they know no culture, they are just waiting for the arrival of Godot on a remote countryside road where nobody comes, nobody goes, and it's awful. Like Cioran says, the fact that life has no meaning is reason to live, moreover the only one, and only optimists commit suicide, optimists who no longer succeed at being optimists, the others having no reason to live. Why would they have any to die? Vladimir and Estragon too do not commit suicide. They postpone their suicide. Vladimir and Estragon are no optimists, and therefore they prefer not to die. In other words, their pessimism is not a failure on the part of their consciousness. It grants them strength and courage to live and face the absurdity and meaninglessness of human life. In fact, both Cioran and Beckett suggest the futility of human life and the inevitability of decay and death. So far, we have been discussing the influence of major philosophers on Beckett's writing. Beckett's writing and the echoes of these philosophers give birth to what we can call Beckettian metaphysics. One of the most important slogans of Beckettian metaphysics is nihilism. In Malone Dies, Beckett has written, nothing is more real than nothing. In Waiting for Godot, he says, nothing happens, nobody comes, nobody goes, it's awful. Nothingness here implies randomness and meaninglessness of the universe in which human beings live. Beckett is suggesting that life lacks inherent meaning, any divine purpose. His writing, clubbed together, posit Beckett as one of the most powerful exponent of the absurdist philosophy. His fictional and dramatic universe is a metaphysical void in which nothing happens again and again and again. Beckett's novels, short stories, and plays are also reflections on time and temporality of human existence. Beckett's plays challenge linear conceptions of time, presenting it as cyclical or stagnant. He suggests that time is oppressive, it's a big burden, and it is inescapable. In order to pass their time, characters in the plays of Beckett indulge in monotonous, repetitive routines of life. However, they are not immune to the workings of time. Time passes, and suddenly they realize that they have grown old and they are about to die. Like it happens in the play Krapp's Last Time. Krapp has been trying to preserve time and his memories through recorded tapes. But a moment comes in Krapp's life when he is 69 and perhaps this is going to be his last tape. Beckett's metaphysics is a metaphysics of embodiment of human existence and suffering. Since human beings are born on this earth, they have no cure. Since they are born, they have to suffer. This suffering will be both bodily and psychological. As we observe in the plays like Waiting for Godot and Endgame, where Vladimir, Stragon, Pozzo, Lucky, Ham, Clove, Nag, Nell all suffer physical as well as psychological pain. In Endgame, Ham's blindness and immobility, along with Clove's stiff movements, reflect the entrapment of the self in a deteriorating body. Beckett is perhaps conscious that there is no way human beings could release the suffering of their mind trapped in their bodies. The body becomes a site where metaphysical concerns about existence, identity, and mortality are dramatized. Beckett's plays are minimalists. They reflect the limitations of language. Beckett's minimalistic style and use of silence underscore the ineffability of metaphysical questions. His plays and novels often suggest that language is inadequate to express the full scope of human experience and metaphysical truth. The fragmented, often incoherent dialogue in plays like Waiting for Godot, Endgame, Happy Days, Krapp's Last Tape reflect the breakdown of communication in the face of existential uncertainty. Beckett is aware that words are not enough to express metaphysical truths of human existence. Beckett says words are all that we have, but every word is like an unnecessary stain on the silence and nothingness. Beckett is conscious that words are futile. Although human beings speak so many words, they write so many words, but all those words are meaningless. Beckett's plays would move further and further towards the aesthetics of silence. Words will become non-important. In a play like Breath, Beckett uses no words at all. So, Beckett is a very conscious dramatist who understands the futility of language and its incapacity to express the deeper, profounder philosophical truths of human existence. Hope you could understand the major philosophical influences on the writings of Samuel Beckett and also the major philosophical propositions of Samuel Beckett. We'll discuss Samuel Beckett's dramaturgy in our next class. Thank you so much. We'll meet in our next class.